Civ-switching is not popular with many Civilization players. It seems to be the main obstacle to previous players of other Civs enjoying Civ 7. And I understand the reasoning of the disgruntled players because Civ-switching seems ahistorical and also somehow disloyal to a bedrock tenet of the game. The ahistoricity point is valid, but each version of Civ has been ahistoric in accepting one leader for a civilization that carries on for centuries after it should have fallen, or that exists centuries before it ever came into being. As for the disloyalty, that's what I want to get more into here. I am one of that breed of Civ players who actually enjoys the Civ switching mechanic. I think it makes room for civilizations that have not had strong or even identifiable leaders. And I find it has led to more complexity and more intense strategizing, as well as encouraging players to be more adaptable as the game progresses. But never mind my cheerleading for the game. At a core level, I can't identify with the need to have a fixed or immutable team. Look, for many years I loved to play team sports, but in my street hockey days, I was that kid who would be perfectly honest about whether or not the ball was over the goal line, even if that meant our team didn't get the goal or had a goal counted against us. Opposing players loved me. But the next night, we would re-choose teams, and some of the people who loved me the night before would groan because we were on the same team this time. Teams are transitory things. I mean, we learn this from history, too, and we can learn it from history games as well. Years ago, I left Canada to live in the USA to make a different team called Family. And when people back home would ask me how different Americans were from Canadians, I would say, it depends on which neighbors you have. Back in the 80s and 90s, with 2 votes for Quebec to separate or not from Canada, you would have been hard-pressed to make a convincing case for a unified thing called Canada. And now, it would be hard for me to sum up the typical American for people back home. I keep returning to a book by David Barabee I read in the mid-2000s. It's called Us and Them, The Science of Identity. He argues that culture, groups, clubs, families have so much variation over time that it is hard to point to a thing that one could call French or Greek, etc. I mean, Londoners in Shakespeare's day would have a hard time understanding Londoners in Chaucer's day because of the great vowel shift that took place towards the end of the Middle Ages. In a way, your Civ switches with or without you. Just ask any old person about the technology and lingo of today versus what they grew up with, or ask them who still uses the word lingo. But Barabee also argues that we seem to inevitably want to tribe up, and he cites a study of young campers who met each other and were then divided up into 2 separate camps to the point where they totally identified and supported their new tribe and became very competitive with the opposing tribe. We want to belong to something we understand, to something familiar. As for Civilization, my history with it begins 9 years before the first version was released. I discovered the board game Civilization by Avalon Hill in 1982. It was invented by Francis Tresham, whose technology tree was the first of its kind in board games, and it inspired what we see in many electronic games now. If you want an idea of what the game was like, just picture a version of Old World, but with cards and counters. That's the time period. I love that game. And the guys in the various residences I lived in over the years would gather on many a Sunday to put 8 to 12 hours into one run-through of it. One of the guys heard Avalon Hill was playtesting Advanced Civilization, a new version of the board game, and put us up as playtesters. So cool. Still grateful for that. So when Sid Meier and the gang came out with something akin to that game, I waited patiently for the port to Mac and then played for 2 weeks straight, interrupted only by teaching a few classes and sleeping. I've liked every iteration of the game. Even Civ 3, which I think was my least favorite, but I can't remember why, to be honest. And I've even forgotten which leaders were in Civ 4, even though I played it a lot. It's only with Civ 7 that I've decided to become part of the wider Civ community. I had no idea how tribal it was. By that I mean how fiercely loyal players are to one version or another of the game, or should I say, the concept. I can understand each of the arguments, but I can't identify with any of them. I think it's something about how I think, I don't know. After all, small battles erupt elsewhere over Star Trek versus Star Wars, or Star Wars original trilogy versus later trilogies, or Star Trek the original series versus Star Trek the Next Generation. Or you can get into debates about Team Matrix versus Team Dark City. And I'll raise my hand here, I confess, because I'm on Team Dark City. But that's one of my few tribal interjections. Never mind political and social tribes. So, why have I bonded so much with Civ 7? Why do I feel the need to defend it? It could be because shortly after my mother's passing, as I was cleaning up some things in her house, and after playing Civ 6 throughout the pandemic, I decided to look up news about a possible Civ 7, and the rumor was that Firaxis had put out feelers to hire an historian. It was the only piece of good news in a very bad year. Did that moment determine how I was going to feel about the game? It could just as easily have led me to build up my expectations to an unreasonable level, leaving me disappointed in the game. Another piece of this is that I was always more bonded to the leaders in Civ games than to the civilizations. Sure, I would hope the developers had done a good job with Greece, maybe, or that this time Canada would be in the game, you know. But these were not strong feelings. I was far more swayed by the leaders and their perceived personalities, especially in the later games. Gilgamesh in Civ 6, for example, seems gregarious, like Ibn Battuta in Civ 7 seems friendly. Or maybe it's my anarchist leanings playing into this. As much as I love the games, I don't love the countries or civilizations in real life. After all, every state is founded in violence. Huh. Yeah, no wonder I don't get invited to parties, right? I wish I had something definitive for you. All I know is that when I started playing Civ 7, it was like getting into a warm bath of history. Even the messy transitions between ages didn't bother me. Messy transitions are the main lessons of history and life. You don't get to keep what you built. You don't get to keep what or who you love. There's always a variation coming that you're not ready for. This has been Civilized Raccoon. I hope you liked that. If you did, please leave a like or a subscribe, and I'll see you next time.